Welcome tonight to our adoption webinar. Hopefully this will be a productive time and an encouraging time and give you some practical tips so that you can prepare and make the most of your time as you're waiting and seeking your adoption. My name is Kim King, and I'm also co-hosting with Libby Murray, and we are two of the team members here at Lifetime, adoptive family coordinators working with outreach and education. If you're new to Lifetime, we have our toll-free hotline at 1-800-923-6784. Again, that's 1-800-923-6784. That's a question and answer line if you are new to Lifetime and you're not sure where to get started and you have some questions about Lifetime. We're happy to speak with you and answer those questions and point you in the right direction. We're generally available Monday through Friday, 8 to 5 Pacific time for adoptive family questions. And our website is lifetimeadoption.com. So if you have not yet filled out your application, you can find the free application at lifetimeadoption.com. And also join us on Facebook, facebook.com/open.adoption. Again, that's facebook.com/open.adoption. And tonight we're excited to present 7 things you can do now as you prepare to adopt. And Libby has graciously prepared some wonderful little slides for us to help guide us through our conversation tonight. So thank you for that, Libby, and thank you for being here.
Great. I just wanted to add, again, like we talked about when we were doing our sound check, that we very much want this to be a place where you can participate, and if you have a question that we can answer for you tonight, we want to hear from you. So if we're talking about a topic, or even if it's something off topic that's just been on your mind, feel free to type it in, because we may be able to answer it either after the webinar or behind the scenes, or at least get it to the coordinator who could give you the best possible answer. So we welcome that. And if you're joining us by phone, you can still email, and you still have access to your email, that is. You can still email questions, and you can send them right to, let's send them right to Kim. And that email address is Kim, K-I-M, at lifetimeadoption.com. So before we dove into the first practical tip, the first thing you can do, Kim, I know that this is a conversation that you often have with adoptive parents, well, sometimes in any phase of adopting, but especially in the beginning. And you would think, ironically, that there's so much to do in the beginning of an adoption planning that you wouldn't be asking for more to do, but people want to be on the ball, people want to get their ducks in a row, and they want to prepare and be as best aware of all the things that they should be juggling and getting in order. And so I know that this is a topic that's near to your heart because of your passion for helping families become equipped sooner than later for their adoption that is coming their way as they keep taking steps. And so what is your experience with where families come from sometimes when they are seeking more about what they can be doing now?
Well, sometimes they're waiting for something that's beyond their control, whether they're just waiting for their home study to finally be complete and officially signed off, but they've done everything, every time the ball came into their court, they bounced it right back and got all their to-dos checked off. Or maybe they're waiting for the financial aspect. A few months to go by, their budget is kind of on target to take a certain step with time. Or maybe they're waiting for if they've financed their adoption. It might take a couple of weeks to get that paperwork all straightened out. And in the meantime, that's beyond their control, so they want more to do to help them prepare. Or perhaps they're already done with their home study, they've already funded their adoption, they're already waiting to be chosen by a birth mom, and they want to know how to make the most productive use of this time. And I just think it's good for us to kind of put our heads together and share these ideas with you, because these might not be things you would think of on your own, but you definitely say, yeah, that's something I definitely would want to do and make the most of my time, because once that baby comes home, you're going to be on baby schedule, so these
Exactly.
are things you can do ahead of time. Yeah.
Which is a good lead-in, because these are just a few questions that I have thought of, because I've worked with families in all the stages like you have, and I would say probably my primary role keeps me more involved with the families who are, wading knee-deep into Lifetime's program. They're waiting to be chosen by a birth mother. But again, that we understand no matter what phase you're in of adoption planning, whether you're just starting to think about it, or if you know for sure it's coming your way, but you're just not officially ready to begin, or if you are, like I said, if you're already in and you're just looking for other things that you can do while you're waiting. I don't think it always has to be a daily thing. Certainly we don't expect you to obsess and devote excessive time into your adoption planning every single day, all the time. But for those of you on the call who are thinking, what we can't? Isn't there something we can do all the time? That yes. I just hope tonight's webinar makes you feel a little bit more like you. It's not just about, checking off the necessities, but that there are also other things that we've seen, Kim, you and I especially, through these webinars too, and the stories that we hear, that we've seen add to a smoother process, add to the adoption success coming. So, one of the questions I thought of was, I'm going to bring this up here on the screen. What can you do in this time that you won't be able to do after you adopt? It's good to just have a little self-reflection about, what this time may be offering you. What can you do in this time that you will need once it's your opportunity to adopt? And that could be the technical things, or that could just be things you want to make sure you're prepared to tell your child's birth mom that you already know is on your heart, but when you're in the moment, you might get too nervous or too excited and you'll forget. Maybe there's things you just want to prepare emotionally or spiritually. Kim, I know you and I have talked a lot with families about, praying now to be ready later, and that it's not always about waiting for something specific to ask questions about or prepare for or pray about, but sometimes it's keeping that heart check and being sincere in pursuing your desire to adopt, and being open to a bigger plan through your adoption journey than just simply adding a child to your family, and just really being aware too of all the answers that you're seeking, all the way from, are we looking for a certain age of child, or are we looking to adopt a certain race, or are we wide open as far as race and age are concerned, or, boy or girl, or are we open to twins or siblings? All of those details come into play, but then also, what kind of adoption do we really want? And all of this is a good time to think about putting yourself in a position to be open and ready to say yes when the time comes.
One thought, Libby, that springs to my mind is, what can you do in this time that you won't be able to do after you adopt and have a newborn in your arms, and you're finishing up some of the legal aspects and things. You're going to have your plate full. Right now, if you have a heart for volunteerism, cooking meals, doing some driving, maybe helping an elderly person or someone who just had a surgery, these are things that you're the one that's going to need that type of help when you get your newborn home. You're the one that's probably going to get meals dropped off, so you won't have to worry about what to feed yourselves for dinner that night. And, these are things that it might be a couple of years before you have a hand free to be able to extend to someone else through volunteerism. Or even if it's just something else you have a passion for, like the local pet rescue, or any number of organizations.
Well, or even if it's something just that's on your mind that you won't be able to do until your child is back in school again, like maybe traveling overseas. I know that's not limiting for some, but for some people it may be overwhelming to think about packing a car seat and a newborn and all this extra luggage just to bring extra diapers and bottle warmers and all of that. You know, there may be a dream or something going on that you're working on finishing right now. You know, like even something too, and this last question brought this up, you know, what could this time offer that will benefit me now and after I adopt? And I think of so many lifetime adoptive parents who either went back to school or finished school to further their education while they were preparing or waiting to adopt. And I think of the families who well, I remember one story, and she actually came on our webinar again earlier this year, but Amber, adopted mom Amber, speaks openly about how, you know, through all of the infertility, she had gotten out of shape. Her body, she just felt like her body wasn't working at her peak form, you know, and so during her adoption journey, she started going back to the gym and really discovered a habit that she actually had to struggle to keep in her routine once she brought her newborn home, because like you said, Kim, the schedule changes, the routine changes, and you know, sometimes it gets hard to keep those good habits. But you know, I think this is a good time too. We can kind of move into the first tip, which is, you know, this is a good time to be the parent you want to become now. And what we mean by that is, you know, are there habits that you want to make sure you have as a parent? Is there anything you wouldn't want your child to learn from you? How do you handle pressure or conflict? You know, Kim, like you were saying earlier, that so much changes when you bring that child home, and it's not always for a season or a short season. Most things I would say in parenting are for a season, but you go into another season, and it's I would say it's never stress-free. And that I know through the adoption process, we've heard from so many adoptive parents who said, you know, we wish that our friends could have gone through all of the education and the training and the support that we've had to go through to build our family, because we look at how much they struggle with not having been aware of how much this would actually take from their lives. You know, and certainly adopting or raising a child adds to your life, but in the immediate, more day-to-day routine, sometimes that, you know, sleep deprivation and changing your meal habits and your shopping habits and when you can get things done, it can be taxing, especially at first through the adjustment. And I just know there are things that I admire in a lot of adoptive parents because they took the time to implement something into their lives that they wanted to share with their child. They didn't wait for their child to show up before that was part of their heart, before that was part of their life.
You know, one thing that springs to mind specifically is if they didn't have a church family.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if you grew up in church, or maybe didn't, but you've always visualized, you know, that you would be bringing your baby to church for the first time and having that dedication, and, you know, that people would be so excited for you. But how can that be if they don't know you? So getting plugged in, you know, finding the small group, going to some of the activities. I think the small groups are really where it's at, Libby. If you're not in one and your church has that, find one, and find one you're comfortable with, and bounce around until you find one you really feel comfortable with. And those are going to be your support network. Those are going to be the people who know what's going on when you need prayer, or you need someone to take you to the doctor, or whatever it is. That's your support network, and they're part of that small group because they want to be part of that. And I think that's going to be something important if you've always wanted that kind of, I guess, faith lifestyle for your child growing up.
Here's a
to get plugged in now so people know you then.
Absolutely. And actually that's something that sparked from a couple of the questions that all of you chimed in just now. I wanted to share this one from Rebecca first, though, because I think this is good no matter what phase of adoption planning you're in. Rebecca said, we plan to take a trip overseas but are sad to think we might miss out on a last-minute opportunity while we were gone, but our trip is long overdue. And I think whether you are just in the beginning phases of putting your adoption plan together, or if you are actively waiting, you've done everything, you're paper ready, you are ready to say yes if called. Either way, it's Lifetime's heart not to ask you to put your life completely on hold. And as long as you're willing to travel and know that we have called people off of cruise ships.
Yes.
Actually, what was it? Was it a family we just spoke to recently on a webinar? No, it was a family I worked with a few weekends ago who had gone out of town for the weekend. And granted, they weren't flying anywhere, so it wasn't as inconvenient, but they had barely been in their hotel room 24 hours when we called and said, we would like you to travel to meet a baby. And they said, that's great. We've hardly used any of our laundry, so we hardly have to repack. And took off and went. But I think traveling excursions, making those plans and keeping them, but just know that if you are, for instance, if you are one of Lifetime's currently waiting families, touch base with your coordinator so that we know how to reach you so that you don't miss out on that. And if there's any reason, if there's anything that would prevent you from saying yes, and Kim, I know that we get a lot of questions from families who are serving actively in the military, and sometimes those travel plans can kind of shake up an adoption plan. But we encourage you to communicate with us because there's usually more than one answer. And we've worked with so many different circumstances that it may not mean you're going to miss out. It may just be something you haven't thought of yet.
I think the military family is a great example of readiness.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, they have a lifestyle of readiness, or at least one spouse does. But they also tend to have a lifestyle of communication to where one spouse is equipped and prepared to make decisions if the active duty spouse cannot be reached.
Right.
And I think that's good practice for civilian families as well. That, if your husband is at a conference and there's no cell reception, and that's when you get that call and he's out of town, and you're not going to speak to him until that night, you're going to need to be equipped to make those decisions and prepared to move forward, perhaps without even talking with him.
Absolutely. Again, part of our heart at Lifetime is to make sure that you're not feeling like you have to figure all the answers out, because
right.
we have seen and heard it all. So that's a big part of what we're doing. Sometimes it's just taking these questions of these what ifs, or this is my circumstance, it just changed in this way, what do I do now? And that's really a big part of what we do, because we never want for you to miss out on an opportunity, because most people, even if you've adopted before, no two adoptions are the same, and it's impossible for you, since it's such a personal investment into your future, for you to be able to remove your heart enough to see all of the perspectives, all of the possible angles and answers, and so that's what we're here for. I love this other suggestion here, because we did have, thank you, Anne, so much, and some of you may have seen this on your computer. I shared it with everyone. She was asking if there are any good books that helped others prepare to be a better adoptive parent. And one of the suggestions that came in was a book that I know is about seeking God's heart in the midst of infertility, miscarriage, and adoption loss. And that certainly, and Marty, Lifetime's founder, has even gone through this many times, where she's recommended, that you make sure that you grieve any loss of a child, whether that was that you couldn't conceive the child, or that you did actually lose a child or a pregnancy, or if you've had adoption loss before, that you grieve that and process that, and that sometimes that means counseling or books, or like you said earlier, a small group with spiritual support, and just having that fellowship and that friendship to pull you through those hard times, but also for you to find the healing so that you can really see God's hand in your family planning and keep the hope alive. And I say this because no matter what stage you're in, I see families even get to an opportunity where they are about to go meet the baby in the hospital. They've already been chosen by a birth mom, and they're still coping with some of these grieving issues, and it prevents them from trusting a birth mother, and sometimes even reacts in a way to her that she's wondering, do you even want this baby? Are you excited about this baby? And so it's good for you. It's good for you not to feel like you have to be superhuman and that it doesn't still come up sometimes, but to deal with where you've been so that when you get to your child's birth mom and she's choosing you, that she has a clean slate with you, because what you went through before has nothing to do with her specifically in most cases. Now, granted, there are some special adoption stories where, the same birth mother comes back in the picture, but that's another story.
Well, and your experiences, especially if you've had an experience maybe in the past with a failed adoption or something, you may have sensitivities lingering from that experience, and those deep feelings those visceral feelings, talk with your adoption coordinator about those, so she can let you know how that's being addressed, whether or not it's a concern this time around, so that you can relax, and be open, like Libby said, have that clean slate. I think that's a wonderful way to put it. Have that clean slate for this new birth mom who's choosing you now.
Mm-hmm. So, and I love all the tips that are coming in. I hope that you can see some of the comments we've tried to share with the audience about books that they've read. We could probably even do a whole webinar just on what books have you read that have helped you prepare for where you are right now and where you're going. But certainly, too, that I do believe there's some recommended reading on lifetimeadoption.com. Also, if you are currently contracted with Lifetime, that I know there is a Reading Nook in your Lifetime membership website that's exclusively available to you. And then, again, I think Facebook has been extremely helpful for adoptive parents to learn more about the possibilities, but also the resources, the information, the do's and don'ts, all of the experiences from other adoptive parents. So again, if you visit our Facebook page, you may even find other recommended reading if that's how you best absorb resources. So let's see here.
I just wanted to mention a couple things for life after your adoption is complete and now you have your baby. Right now might be a good time to research things like infant massage and get the things you need.
So true, yes.
Supplies you're going to need. I know so many people who have 3 or 4-year-olds, and I say, "Did you do infant massage?" And they go, "What? I've never heard of that." And I wish they would have known. So here you go. Research that. There are lots of little I know there are Mommy and Me groups where you can go and do infant massage led by a therapist who can give you tips, and those are great, soothing, bonding, dealing with fussy baby, colicky, gas type of scenarios. The infant massage can be really wonderful, and I recommend it to anyone. And then also infant sign language. Some people may not know that infants, not newborns, but as they get a little bit further into their development, can start to learn basic sign language concepts before they can develop their speech. So before they can say the word more or food, they can actually sign that word and understand the concept. And that goes a long way if they know how to communicate with you. So those might be some things to look into. Those are fun things to look forward to sharing with your baby.
Absolutely. And that you can even kind of practice now. So when we say, I hope that it doesn't sound insensitive or too simple to say become the parent you want to become now, but it just means most of us have things in our life that we always say, well, once this happens, then I'll be like this. But it's better to be like this before that happens, if that makes any sense to you.
Totally makes sense. Came out good, Libby.
So, an example I always think of is exactly like you just said, Kim. I remember taking sign language in college, and one of the favorite things that stood out to me that I personally can't wait to practice when I become a parent is sign language with a child, because it was talking about how deaf children or any infant that is taught sign language can actually communicate by the time they're about 6 months old. But your vocal cords aren't developed well enough at that point to really form the words. And so that's where, you start to get the frustration with, 9 months, a year old, 14, 18 months old, is because they're still developing that skill to actually use the words that they recognize in their brain. And they know they want to tell you, but they can't get it out. And I loved hearing that, because it was saying that babies raised by deaf parents can even speak in sentences at around 6 or 7 months old, which is just astounding.
That's, wow, mind-boggling.
So,
and there could be
free
YouTube videos. Just dabble around and look up and see what you can find, so you can start getting some of those techniques under your belt.
But also that it very much is a good time to strengthen your marriage or your family ties, because adding a child to your family won't decrease any tension. It won't add time that you'll be able to spend with loved ones or your spouse. You really want to use this time now. Even if you already are raising a child, if you're going to add another child to your family, it's going to change the dynamic. So look at, what are things that I want to see ongoing in my future, and start implementing them now. Don't wait for your dream to come true to start owning some of the things that you really want to be proud of yourself for later. I hope that encourages on the right track. Let's talk next about, and we've kind of discussed this with some of the books, but the next thing we want to discuss is learning about adoption from all points of view. And Kim, I want for you to share, because a big part of your heart is that adoptive parents not only equip themselves and be as informed as possible about what to expect from their angle of the process, but that they also get a healthy birth mother perspective.
Yes. To understand, where she might be coming from, where women have come from when they have chosen adoption. Libby, we provide resources on adoptionteleconference.com, where we've interviewed birth moms, and we've also interviewed adoptive parents about their relationship with their child's birth mom. Understanding where she's coming from will put you in a much better position to meet her where she is, or maybe even halfway, and make that connection, so you could start to maybe empathize, and she'll feel that you understand and that you appreciate what she's doing. You're trying your best to understand where she's coming from. I think when we expose ourselves to real life birth mom experiences and emotions, so many courageous birth moms are sharing their personal stories and the thought process that she went through, as she chose adoption and then chose the family and went through with the physical placement of that child. I just think that if we can just kind of walk through what it must be like from her point of view, that's going to enable you to support her during probably one of the most difficult times in her life, while it'll be one of the most exciting times in yours.
Well, and I want to add to that, too, that sometimes I think there's almost, I don't want to downplay at all the seriousness of the emotions and the experience that any birth mother goes through. But on the other hand, try not to put too much, onto what you think she will be like or what you think she will go through, because and where this is going is that I want to encourage you to listen to other stories from other birth mothers, other birth families, because they will talk about grieving it, and they'll talk about, that they miss their child, but through open adoption, it changes a lot of what we've heard from older adoption stories where a birth mother never knew what happened to her baby. And I know that we have done several adoption stories on our webinars, even in the last year, where we've had guests on who are birth parents, and they share what that's like for them to have an open adoption and how much it means to them to see their child thriving and doing so well with the family they picked for this baby, and that she's okay, that she's doing things with her life and that she's happy and content with her decision. But on the other hand, I definitely agree, Kim, and I wanted to point out, if anybody wants to download a free copy of So I Was Thinking About Adoption, it's our little resource for any pregnant woman or any mother who's considering adoptive parents for a child, that you can go to freeadoptionbook.com and then just make sure you put in there that you heard about it on Lifetime's webinar, so that our birth mother coordinators don't think that you are seeking adoptive parents.
Right.
But it's a great read. It's easy. If you're more tactile, you can actually order it on Amazon too. But it's called So I Was Thinking About Adoption. And then, as we saw earlier, one of the other books that's helpful that Marty Caldwell also wrote is Called to Adoption. And I think it's still available for Kindle and ebook free. So if you go to Amazon and look for their Kindle version of that, you can even get that free right now too. And you don't have to have a Kindle to get it. You can always get the computer version of Kindle from Amazon. And that's just a free download so that you can read it on your computer. But again, just learning about all the angles, and then even learning, we didn't put this as a bullet point, but there is information out there and counselors out there whose expertise is in the perspective of a child through adoption. And certainly with Lifetime, we focus on private open adoption, where it's, there's a known triad going on with the adoptive parent, the birth parent, and the child. But if your heart is for international adoption or for foster care or foster adoption, then you're going to need to look into the resources that will give you those perspectives so that you are prepared for what your child may be thinking or asking as they grow up, and what those birth parents, if they're involved at all, if what they're thinking about or learning about. Again, you really want to make sure you understand the expectations for the type of adoption you're seeking, and that sometimes means looking at it from all the angles involved in your adoption story.
And just remember, like Libby was saying earlier, you might read about the classic emotions birth moms or adopted children go through, or even adoptive parents, but that might not necessarily be the truth and the reality for your child or your child's birth mom, or even yourself, if you're researching what it's like emotionally to walk through the excitement of being matched, the hesitation, developing that trust, moving forward physically to fly out to wherever that birth mom is. There are so many adoptive parents who have written about their experiences, and it can be very validating to read or listen to, if it's a video, how it actually felt going through and what they would have wanted someone to say, is normal to feel. But just know that if you don't feel those things, or if your child's birth mom doesn't feel those things or struggle with different things, that's okay too. It's just kind of preparing just in case, so you can have that heart and know that I guess what I'm trying to say is she'll feel more comfortable having a connection with you if she understands that you're compassionate toward her experience.
Absolutely. And I just want to say for all of you on the call tonight that even though you may never have the opportunity to detail out just how much you prepared and researched and examined and learned before you get to speak with your child's birth mother, she appreciates how much you're going through to become ready. So everything you're doing right now, and we've kind of downplayed it, but I mean, right now you're doing a lot of what we're talking about just by participating in tonight's webinar, that you're staying active in the process, that you are continuing to open your mind and your heart, and you're continuing to share those questions and get answers, and that this is what we love about families like you, is that we know that your heart is in it for the right reasons and that you want to be the very best that you can for your child's birth mom, but also to have as smooth as possible a process, you know. And I just want to thank you all for your time to be here, because I know that sometimes it's exciting to prepare and research, but at the same time that there may be some of you thinking, well, right now I'm just kind of going through the motions because I don't totally know what to expect and it's overwhelming, or maybe you're even starting to feel a little discouraged because you haven't been successful so far. And I just want you to know that if you continue to take steps like you're taking tonight, it's only going to lead you to good places. And that someday, even though you may not be able to sit down and tell your child's birth mom, or even your child, all the tiny little bullet points and all the things that you learned, it's all adding up to this big tool bag of you being equipped to handle what's coming your way, to being able to say ready when the time comes. So, so that it's wonderful to see. And I want to move on, I think, to our next slide, Kim, because this is a big one on everyone's mind. And I think it's a little bit obvious, but I think it's worth bringing up. And we also had a question come in, which I'm so grateful. Thank you, Andrea. Her question, I actually want to bring this up, is just to pose the next slide. I know it's important for prospective adoptive parents to be financially stable. How much money should we have available before beginning to finance adoption? And so the next tip is to begin funding your adoption as soon as possible. And I just want to clarify, Kim, before you go into a lot of the ideas that you share with families, this doesn't necessarily mean plunk it all down as soon as possible, but this means start today thinking about your adoption fund and putting whatever you can into it. And I want to share from my own experience that I know there's sort of a stereotype when it comes to funding adoption that maybe it's only people who have, you know, this bankroll just waiting, or expendable income. Dispensable income, I'm not sure which word I should use there, but
expendable. Wait, disposable?
There we go.
I think it's expendable.
Most people who adopt combine efforts using one or more of a lot of the suggestions we're going to talk about in just a second. You know, so I don't want for you to feel like when you read the tips, start funding your adoption ASAP, that makes you feel anxious, like we cannot start right now, we don't have it. Because what this means is start taking steps toward this goal. Instead of, you know, I think about even littler things that I've wanted to have in my life, goals in my life that, you know, most goals take some kind of financial resource. And I think about maybe after even a year or 6 months, I look back and think, wow, you know, I spent $300 in, you know, this summer just going to the movies or something like that. You know, I mean, I didn't. I haven't seen that many movies, but or eaten that much popcorn. But a lot of us look at that. We can look and say, wow, you know, I've spent the last 2 years wanting a new car, but I haven't done anything about putting money towards a down payment or something like that. So if you have a goal, you know, think about it in the broader sense of where I am today. Today may not be the day that I'm ready to start and to fund my adoption, you know, by paying adoption fees. But today is a day that I can look at, you know, one of the following options and start taking action. And so, Kim, I know that you talk a lot with families about savings and fundraising. I put in here yard sale and list items for sale because I think that a lot of times that gets overlooked. You know, Kim, you were talking recently about just, I know that you're kind of big on between seasons, going through your stuff and weeding out and keeping what you want, and then pruning and getting rid of what you're not using anymore.
Yes, purging. Yep.
Yes.
Sorting, purging. Yes. I'm a big purger.
I've heard from a lot of adoptive parents that they talk about how they looked at, you know, it says examine your lifestyle, and what we mean by that is there may be things you can cut out, like instead of I know Marty likes to go to this. This is kind of the big go-to. But instead of buying your coffee every morning, make it at home. Learn how to make a tasty treat at home that you can take in a nice travel mug that's going to keep it hot. And put the money intentionally that you're saving from that habit into an adoption fund or a piggy bank or something like that. I've heard from other adoptive parents, this one always comes to mind because I just admired it so much, but she and her husband actually decided, you know what, let's go down to one cell phone, because she primarily was a stay-at-home parent, so she had the house phone still, and so they went down to one cell phone, and they put the money that they saved from paying for the second phone before into their adoption fund. And I remember it was adoptive mom Michelle, and she talked about using every bit they saved down to the dime. So it was there when they needed it for the legal needs of their adoption. So there may be things in your life that you can look at and think, you know, I know there's kind of a big push right now. I've seen a lot of commercials about this from grocery stores where they're saying how much money you can save just on cutting out one evening of eating out for a family of four. And so even if you're not a family of four yet, you can still look at, you know, I know, Kim, you and I talk all the time. One of our favorite treats is going out after church, going to lunch. But if you skip that, you know, maybe you're saving $20, $30, $40, maybe $50. And eventually all of that will add up.
It totally adds up. All these different areas add up. One thing that where our household is doing right now is that we have decided to try to not eat out for the month of September.
Oh, wow.
It's a month that doesn't have a lot of, like, you know, going out. It's a quiet month. You know, it's a transitional month, transitioning into fall, yay. But it's cooling off. You can start cooking again. You know, it takes planning. I'm just going to warn you, don't end up starving and then having to run to the grocery store that night on your first day. It takes planning. But think how much you can save just by, like, saving on the gas to and from restaurants, the tax on the, you know, whatever there may be taxable, the, of course, gratuity, and the overpriced, overfattening foods, sodium-wise as well, that are just not that really good for you in most cases. And you can be at home, cooking at home, preparing, planning, you know, working around the sales at the grocery stores. Focus on the Family had a good, I think she's a stay-at-home mom, and she shared how she made that transition from being a career mom to a stay-at-home mom. She just felt that it was really important for her, but financially, how could it be done? So they examined everything and started doing things like eating at home and working around the sales at the grocery store. And there's a whole Focus on the Family already did this program, so you can just search on their site, you know, it's a broadcast they did maybe a week or two ago. But also on YouTube, there is a family that I like. Their YouTube channel is Debt is Dumb. And I just love them. They're expecting a baby right now. They have 2 little girls, and they are a Dave Ramsey, you know, financial freedom family, and they share some tips, and they show you what they actually do to cut out expenses and live on a budget and put more funds toward things that they really value.
You know, and
that's just a really good.
I think that's good. I know a lot of churches, even if you don't belong to a church yet, I think you can still find these and participate in these programs. But they have that Dave Ramsey program, the Financial Peace University, which, again, this kind of goes back to become the parent that you want to be, you know, after you adopt. Start being that parent now, because teaching the child healthy spending habits is such an asset these days that I see so few parents doing. And I know as a grown-up, I got to say, it, you know, it hits you smack in the face if you weren't taught how to budget or, you know, mark out the different areas that you have for bills. You know, sometimes it takes a while as you get into the real world that you're so tempted by credit and everything else that it's not that those things are bad, but that if you can teach your child healthy spending habits from the beginning, then you're not having to recorrect or retrain yourselves later and recoil. But on the same side, I want to say that if you're in this call and you're thinking, well, that's all fine, but it's going to cost me more than a few $100s to adopt, all of these things, like Kim said, they all add up together, and most adoptive parents are combining efforts. Again, sometimes they're looking at ways to finance in a low interest or zero interest finance type situation, depending on your circumstances and your credit availability. That may be an option for you. Other times there's payment options, saving up. Again, I can't emphasize enough fundraising. So many people want to help others adopt. And it won't cost them thousands of dollars to help you adopt because they're participating in your fundraiser. So if you get a whole community involved, sometimes even a whole country, if you figure out a clever way to sell something or raise funds, that people start sharing it with people you haven't even met yet, you may be surprised you could come up with the funds to finance your home study. And talking with your church, a lot of churches these days, I'm hearing about adoption ministries where they actually, receive applications from hopeful adoptive parents, and they want to help them finance an adoption. So look into the options that may be around you. We didn't put it here, but employer benefits is another great one to examine. And then I have on here gifts. Tell people about your plans, because people are amazing. I've heard so many stories of even just strangers hearing about hopeful adoptive parents and their plans to save money to adopt, and that strangers have said, I always wanted to adopt and I never got around to it. I'd like to give you some of my inheritance towards that. You may even find free services that can help reduce your adoption expenses. It's just, don't discount anything. Don't discard any of the ideas, because you never know what is going to be the final drop in the bucket that's going to make you able to say, I'm ready to go. I'm ready to start.
And you know what? The yard sale is a fundraiser.
Mm-hmm.
I know an adoptive family who I think they might have monthly had a yard sale where they got people to contribute items. So it wasn't just from their home, because you're thinking, well, the last yard sale I had, I made $120, like from your clothes you don't want, and
Mm-hmm.
maybe a couple stray items, decorative items you don't want. But they got larger ticket items donated from people who wanted to contribute and had these things laying around and hadn't gotten around to donating to a thrift shop or something, or maybe their own yard sale. But if they hear that you are willing to pick up the item and that it's going toward your adoption, they'd be willing to donate that item.
We had a suggestion here from Krista. She said, my sister-in-law hosted a fundraiser for us on Facebook. She created a page for us and then added her friends and asked them to add their friends, and they made it basically like a Facebook marketplace of used items.
Yes,
and
that's
just as
awesome.
they raised $2,000. That's amazing.
Yes, and with this yard sale, this family had raised over $1,000 a pop.
Yeah.
Every yard sale they had, they raised over $1,000 because of the donated items and the work they put into it. And I think having a sign-up that says it's for adoption is a great help.
Yes. I know there were a couple questions, especially the initial one we had here, that just said, what is the average cost, or how much should we even have or prepare? I want to say there's no specific answer for us on this webinar, because everyone's adoption is different. If you pursue an adoption through Lifetime, that may be different than pursuing an adoption through China, or even another agency or another adoption professional. So, if you have questions about specifically how much you would need for our program or for the program you want to seek within our services, contact us, call us. We want to talk with you about, what you're looking for, so that we can point you in the right direction and get you the right expectations, because every adoption is a little different, and it a lot of times can depend on where you're coming from and what you're searching for. So, but again, the final point on this topic is really even once you've reached your goal, like let's say somebody said it's going to cost you $8,000 to start a program. Don't just stop at $8,000. Once you're waiting to adopt, keep saving, keep adding to your adoption fund, because it may open you up for opportunities that you may not have prepared for or even thought you would consider before. Like if you build your budget and your state allows you to, it may allow you to be presented to birth mothers who might need their hospital bill covered. Or if it's, if your adoption ends up in a state that is a little bit more expensive legally. I know for us, sometimes we're looking at families who have already told us that they've budgeted a little bit more than average, because we don't want to stress a family out by presenting the situation to them that they would have to pass on just because it was out of the usual financially. So again, just keep adding to it, because you're building habits that are also going to benefit your family. And if you don't use it for your adoption, you still have it to use toward your family, maybe a college fund, or celebrating the adoption once it happens, or taking a vacation as a family for the first time, any of that. It will only benefit you to continue building that.
Yes.
Yes, absolutely, Jessica. College savings is right on. And I love this. I hope that some of you joining us online, some people are chiming in saying, yes, we found that link, or yes, I found that book. So I love hearing all of this. It's great. And again, if you have a question tonight.
Did you share that with people? Let's see.
If you have a question tonight that we're not able to answer audibly for you tonight, we'll try and stick around for a few minutes and answer it behind the scenes. But again, you can always call us and talk with us one-on-one, and it's no obligation to. I don't want for you to feel like, gosh, if I call, they're going to, suck me in and start making me talk to a whole spiel or something. We're really sincere about our heart for just helping you get the answers you need so that you can lay the next stepping stone along your path to adoption, whether that's with us or someone else, or as you take your time. Some people's stepping stones are closer together. Some people take longer to leap from one to the other. So it's totally your pace. It's totally your call, but we want to be able to help you with answers that are specific to you. So please reach out. I want to move on here to the next couple topics, because these are real simple, but and also these are, I want to say for those of you listening, these are sometimes tips that we only give to people once they're currently waiting with Lifetime. So this is kind of prime information here that may seem a little simple, but it gets easily overlooked. The first one is to take pictures. No matter who you work with to adopt, especially with a domestic U.S. adoption, you're going to need a profile that shows you to birth mothers, and that profile is going to need to include at least a few photos. And Lifetime, we have a special recipe for what we see working with the profiles that birth mothers are reading as they consider adoptive parents, and we share that openly with our Lifetime families. But no matter who you're working with, they're going to need photos. And I can't tell you how many adoption sites I have looked at where I've thought, oh my gosh, I can't believe they used that photo. Because you have to, again, look at things through the eyes of a birth mother and think, what is this photo showing her? And if that's not a good enough tip for you, then think about it. Have a pregnant friend or someone who's been pregnant recently. Try and look at it through their eyes, because I've noticed that pregnant women or mothers in crisis, they have a different perspective on the world. And a photo of a grown man sliding down a park slide with tiny children nearby sometimes doesn't come across as fun-loving. Sometimes it looks predatorial. So, there's little things like this to again, look from the perspective of a birth mother, but also you want to be interesting to her. You don't need to just show her a bunch of what what are they calling them now, selfies. I feel like such an old person saying that. But, you know, people these days love to take pictures of themselves with their cell phones, but really all of those photos look the same. And please do not ever put a photo in your profile of you standing in front of a mirror in your bathroom or in your car. So start now carrying your camera around and taking print quality photos of what you do in your life. And this may seem kind of hokey and dorky at first, but it kind of becomes fun. And if anything, it allows you to look back at these years of your life and think, look at all the stuff we did. You know, we used to like go for walks by the lake, or we went and picked cherries at Grandma's orchard. You know, or maybe you rode a haunted train, or you used to take ice skating lessons. Whatever it is, just start taking pictures of what you do in your normal life, not just the special occasions, and not just post photos.
Right. I think the 2 photos you have up right now on the slide, if you're joining us on the online webinar format, those are great examples of actions. They look happy, they're enjoying life, they're together.
Right.
You know, I think that's a good example.
Well, in that second one, too, where they're cooking in the kitchen together, I think they're making chili rellenos, which does look really good right now.
Yes, so it's like a cultural thing, and
yes.
that he's known for being an awesome cook, you know, around the family and everything.
Well, and also that we've had tips as we're talking here about home study preparation. There are things you can do now, even if you're not ready to complete your home study this month. There are things you can do now to start pulling things together to have ready for the home study process, but also this photo is a good reminder of so many tips that you and I have heard on these webinars from adoptive parents that said, give food to your home study provider when they come to your visit. So,
feed them.
You know, and we didn't put this on here, but as you're thinking about a home study in the near future, or even if it's a year from now that you're going to begin that process, think about things around your home. If you have a pool, do you have a fence? Does the fence have a lock on it? If you have animals, are the animals vaccinated and up to date, you know, health-wise? You know, these are all things a home study provider is going to ask you about. You can pull together your marriage certificates, your birth certificates. You can get, they're going to want to look at your tax records, so make sure that you have your previous couple of years of taxes in a place where you know how to access them. But also, you know, we've done a few webinars where we've gone into depth about what to expect with a home study. But again, a home study doesn't mean they're coming through with a white glove and they're going to look under and in every cabinet that you own, or check to make sure that you made your bed with hospital corners or that you have fresh, clean pillows or something like that. You know, they're not getting like crazy on you. But there may be things that you can organize in your home. You know, if you're like me and you have a catch-all room that you like to call your craft room, but really it's just stacks of boxes with projects you hope to finish soon, then now's the time maybe to think about, okay, well, how can we organize that so that it's safe and things are in closets or in containers or in drawers so that if a child came in here, it wouldn't be a hazard. You know, start preparing your home for the home study visit and for your child. And then also on here are a couple other tips that you and I talked about before, Kim, where pulling reference letters or even your physicals. These may be more time sensitive, so you may not want to pull them too far ahead and complete these too early if you don't plan on completing your home study process soon. But reference letters are generally needed from loved ones or family and friends, sometimes even coworkers or colleagues to complete your home study. But every home study provider has different requirements, so we don't want for you to go collect a dozen of those and then not be able to use them. But there are things to keep in mind and to maybe start talking with a few people about, you know, hey, we're thinking about adopting. Do you think you would be open to writing a letter for us? And just start warming the playing field up, you know. Now, Kim, I know that you get a lot of questions about, you know, do we need to have our home study completed before we start with Lifetime? what's your best tip for people who are anticipating the home study process?
I think start your home study around the same time you start with Lifetime. Within a month in either direction, I think is, well, I mean, you probably wouldn't want to wait a month after starting the program, but if you're within the first month of starting our program, that's an ideal time to go ahead and start the home study and maybe even get it well on its way before you even start with us. That's totally fine either way. If you're a new family to Lifetime who is just starting your program, we will provide a home study provider referral for you when you do your welcome call for us. Just let us know at that time, basically, that you need a referral, and we'll make sure you have someone you can call upon for your home study. So you don't have to have it all under your belt in order to start using the resources here at Lifetime.
And if you're completely confused about what a home study is and how to even begin knowing where to find someone who will do that for you, again, please call us. Kim and her team, they have so many resources for you so that you don't have to panic or become anxious about things you don't yet understand or know or maybe never have heard of yet. So, you know, the next tip we have is to keep track of your notes. And this may seem obvious, but all of those notes, all of the questions that you're asking tonight, I hope that you have a special binder or a folder, or maybe if you're digitally organized, that you're keeping a thumb drive or something on your computer where you can easily go and access those. And what I was thinking about in this topic, too, was something I read actually this weekend about journaling. And I don't know about any of you on the call, but I like to keep a journal and record a lot of my prayers or just the questions that I'm going through in my mind, just in general in my life. And it's always so helpful because as I see the answers come along, that I look back, you know, maybe last week or 2 weeks or even a day ago, I can say, wow, that was on my mind, and now here's the answer. And as we get answers to our questions and we start seeing things unfold, the direction becomes clearer, and we have less fear moving forward about whatever we're pursuing. So keep asking questions and keep recording your answers and checking them off so that you can see the progress you're making too, because there is a lot to think about. I'll give you that much. But if you're feeling like it's still confusing and you've already been researching for a year, you may want to look at, okay, well, how am I keeping track of the answers? How am I keeping myself informed so that I'm not feeling like I'm overwhelmed, but that things are actually becoming clearer?
And if you are feeling overwhelmed or you are feeling confused, ask your adoption professional, what's the next step I should be taking at this point? You know, what should I be working on next? Whether it's making that first phone call to the home study provider or scheduling the first meetings with a home study provider, or writing your Dear Birth Mother letter, or taking a special photo for the front cover of your profile. Whatever it is, your adoption professional should be prepared to tell you what you should be doing next, or can at least examine your progress so far and let you know if there's anything you should be doing at that point. And if she says, well, you know, you've done everything that you're supposed to do, then this is the webinar that tells you everything to do next.
Nice. Well, and also that, you know, a big part of this that I can't emphasize enough is to just not only to be honest with yourself, but to be honest with the person or the people or the organization that you're asking to help you through your adoption process. Be open and honest about where you are in the process, what you're confused about, what timeline you're on, what you're looking for in your adoption, any concerns or even emotional questions that you may have in addition to the step-by-step, you know, logistical needs that your adoption will require. Because I know, and I've seen it on these webinars too, so many of you will put off asking a question because you're not sure that you're ready to take the next step once you get the answer. But it's okay to say, hey, I'm not ready to move forward yet, but I had this question. It's okay to communicate where you're at and what you want and when you want this to happen. so that once you are ready to take the next step, you're not having to, make up for all this time when you could have been getting the answers. So just, communicate. I know, Kim, you work with so many families, and some of them will think that they're ready to start, and then they get into the research, or maybe something comes up in their family or in their life, and it puts a hurdle there that they're not ready to start when they thought they would as soon as they could, and that it's okay to tell us, if something came up and we're not able to start right now, and and to say, but I would still like to get information, or I'd still like to know that our application's still accepted when we are ready, to just communicate, because nothing bad can come out of that. Nobody's going to put a big black check on your file that says, they weren't ready within 21 days, so they can never come,
Right.
We don't want you to be unnecessarily limited, but a lot of times the limitations come from what you put on yourself. So just be open with us, because there's really only good things that we want to do for you or to offer you. And we talked a little bit about the application earlier, Kim, but again, a big focus of our services here at Lifetime is to help families find the right path for their future adoption, and that, in a sense, means that not everyone who applies will be accepted into our program, but that's not usually a personal rejection. I would say 99% of the time it's not, it's not something that you did or didn't do. It's that, we only work with so many birth moms, and we have to bring in families that these women are looking for, and that it wouldn't be fair to you or to someone else to bring in a ton of families that we thought, may not be successful in our program at this time. So don't be disheartened, as you're researching adoption professionals. Keep asking the questions, communicate your time frame and what you're looking for, and just know that each step is going to lead you to the program that's going to lead you to your baby.
And say that you do apply, and like Libby said, if you aren't approved for our opening, that doesn't mean you don't have what birth moms in any program or our programs are looking for. It may just mean we don't have an opening available, and we're also looking at between, I would say, 200 and 400 applications a month of adoptive families. So obviously, we're going to be fair, and well, it may not be obvious to every organization, but we are going to be fair and say, no, we can only offer an opening to this small group of families, and it's nothing personal toward the other families. And they may very well have the ability to be successful here, but it comes down to the amount of openings.
Right. A good example here is that if you're truly only hoping to adopt, say, a 3-year-old, or if you're truly only hoping to adopt a girl, we may tell you, you would spend a very long time waiting, and that wouldn't be fair to you, to wait excessively to complete your adoption for that opportunity to come up. We may have a lot of families who are already waiting for those similar circumstances, and we want to make sure that you're successful, and so that's really where we come from. But a lot of these tips we're talking about tonight will really equip you with whatever program you end up seeking for your adoption path. And the final note on this tip, to keep track of your notes is to hold on to your notes. Don't get rid of them once your adoption's complete. Keep them, because you may be able to help someone else. And it was funny that this came to mind, because this is something I really emphasize with women thinking about adoption as birth mothers, is I always tell them it's okay to research adoption, and even if you decide it's not the right program for you or it's not the right choice for you, you never know who you can help with the research that you collected. And the same goes for adoptive parents. Plus, you may want to adopt again, and all of your research may make it easier.
I've actually spoken with a couple of families this year who thought, okay, so they did all their research, and they were getting ready to start pursuing their adoption through active steps. But then maybe they got pregnant, or some other circumstances took place, you know, and they decided that they're not adopting, and they threw away all the research they did. And then 6 months later are calling saying, I know you answered this for me before, but I threw out my binder because I thought we weren't adopting, you know, or I threw away my packet because I thought we weren't going to be moving forward. But then something changes, and now they are moving forward, whether it's they thought they weren't moving forward because they became pregnant, or they thought they weren't moving forward because they couldn't afford it or something. But then circumstances change. You know, so I think even though I'm a big fan of purging, keeping your research, I think, is important.
Right. And really, too, those of you in the call who you might be able to identify with this if you're already waiting lifetime, there's so much information in the beginning of an adoption plan that you're getting together, you're organizing, you're finding the answers to, you're completing the steps for, that it gets easy to overlook some of the answers. So you may get 6 months in and think, I know I asked that before, but for the life of me, I cannot remember the answer. And not only are you able to ask us again, but that if you are keeping track of everything, you can kind of leaf through there and say, oh, yeah, oh, that's right, that's what I can expect with that. And so, you know, again, we don't expect you to retain it all. I don't even retain it all. I'm so glad that I have a team that I can call, you know, even late at night sometimes if I'm working with a birth mother and I'm not sure. We all very much rely on each other so that we're not having to spend excessive amounts of time finding you the answers we need, either from our own memory or from, you know, our archives, because we have a team that has worked with Lifetime in all different scenarios and situations for many years, and that I really rely heavily on that, even though, you know, Kim, you and I have been with Lifetime a long time, and there are still things that we call each other to ask about, and we ask the birth mother coordinators, and so it's okay to ask questions. Don't ever hesitate to ask a question. Even if you feel like you've asked before, but at the same time, keeping record will really help you feel like you're getting everything straight and that you can see clearly what you want to do. Let's see here. I wanted to move on. I know that we're running over tonight here, Kim, and I think this last tip is probably the most exciting, but also the most nerve-wracking for most adoptive parents, and it is to begin preparing for your child, because if you truly want to adopt, as Marty always says, there is a child for every family who truly wants to adopt, and this will happen. So if you keep doing what you can and doing everything that you need to be prepared to adopt legally and emotionally, it's going to happen. You're going to welcome a child home, and I just love this photo, and I'm hoping to get them on one of our webinars here soon, because they attended probably 9 out of 10 of our webinars, and that they, you know, they were always chiming in with so many questions, but also encouragement, and also were honest about their struggles, and I would just love for them to share their testimony to encourage everyone else, but you know, if you're comfortable, and I say this with emphasis because not everyone is able to do this, but some people may find comfort or excitement, you know, or greater preparedness by getting a nursery or the child's room ready. Now, if you're not sure yet, if you're adopting a newborn or an older child, you may want to just start thinking about what you will be putting into that room, or which room of the house it will become. But for some people, they may want to totally deck this out, and that's okay. Everyone has different ideas. I know recently we even had a Facebook conversation about this very topic, which was, did you get the nursery ready before or after the adoption? Lifetime's founder, Marty, is very open about the fact that she waited until her baby was home. Other families love knowing that it's ready and waiting. And some families are somewhere in between, where they loved getting it ready, but now that they're still waiting, they're not sure that, you know, that it's always the most comfortable thing to walk by the room that's not yet filled with their baby. But you have to do what's right for you, but it is okay to start putting that together and committing the space, devoting the space in your home and in your lives to this child that's coming your way. Kim, do you get a lot of questions from families on more the inquiry side that want to know if they should start preparing a room yet?
Yeah, I think that's something that families who are at the point where they're still asking, what is a home study type of thing, that they wonder that too, along with wanting to know whether or not they should name their child, if they can name their child that comes to them through adoption.
Yeah, to start thinking
And
about names.
I usually encourage families to prepare the room, because if you know you're actively pursuing adoption, and like Libby said, as long as it's emotionally the right choice for you personally. But if it is, then I encourage you to do that, because you're going to be bringing a baby home at any time. You don't know when you're going to get that call and come home after being out of town for 2 weeks and have your baby in your arms. So I think it can also be very confidence building to know you are going to be bringing that baby home and you have a place prepared for your child. And there may be some things that are left until your child is actually home and everything's a done deal, like gender-specific items or specifically what month your baby is in when you, like, say that you're open from newborn up to 6 months. There may be some different needs involved, but I encourage families to go ahead, and it's okay. It's almost like sometimes families are asking for permission to do that. And I think if they're excited about it and they feel emotionally it's the right choice for them as a couple, that they should.
Right. Again, it's totally personal decision, but there are even little things, that even if you're not ready yet to get items for your baby. Now, I say non-perishable supplies here. Start getting supplies that won't expire, such as you don't necessarily need to stock up on cans of formula that may have a year expiration date, because you don't want to have to throw all of those away unless you know someone else you can donate them to in a hurry. But, you may want to stock up on maybe
herb crops.
Right. Or
things
maybe
you can never have too much of.
Yeah. There could be things that you've been thinking, gosh, we've really held off. We were trying to get pregnant for so long that, at first we started looking at colors and themes we'd want for the nursery, but we're not doing that anymore. You may even just want to look at a catalog or go to a store or shop online and start creating sort of a favorites list so that you can do it slow. We had a suggestion here from Jessica. She said, I have an idea. I started a Pinterest board for adoption books, fundraisers, and special gifts, and I was also thinking this is also where you could put nursery ideas and baby things, that, baby supplies that you love or that you want to have later. And that way it's all
just be aware your username may be searchable by those you know, so be prepared for questions if you make that open.
That's true, if you haven't yet told anyone. Yeah.
Right.
So, and think about, chances are, even if you are adopting within your state, you're still going to likely need to travel at least for a couple overnights to be near your baby. So think about travel options. Do we have what we need to make traveling easy with a baby? Do we have, I can think of just even some things that make traveling easier altogether that I appreciate, like the space bags. I can't tell you how I ever traveled without them before, because they're just amazing. There may be just things that you could do that aren't necessarily totally baby related or child, adoption related, but that will help you once you get to that time that you need to travel. And then certainly, I always encourage families, start recording your story now. A memory book, a scrapbook, a journal, maybe your research binder turns into this somehow, but your family story has already begun. And it's okay to document all of these things that you're going through so that you can share with this child later, hey, this is what we had to go through to find you. And and it was worth it. And here's what our life was before you came along, and here's where we are today. And that it'll be a treasure. And a lot of people have shared, I've heard particularly from adopted moms, that they got their nursery ready, and then the way that they coped with it while they were waiting was they would sit in there and journal or read scripture or listen to inspiring music. They'd pray, just write letters to their future child about what they want them to know about their family or the kind of life they're coming into. Maybe you even write letters or thoughts to your child's birth mother that maybe you just keep for your sake. Maybe they don't ever reach her hands, but that all of these things are a way to process this time and, really, really just help you be ready for that moment, because it's going to come. And I can't tell you how many times I've talked with people who were surprised when it came, and they weren't ready to move forward. And every step that you're taking right now is just totally increasing the odds that you are going to be all the more ready to say yes when you're presented with that opportunity to meet your child. So, Kim, do you have any final thoughts before we wrap up tonight?
I had a couple little tips. One from Krista. She said, we decorated our nursery and really loved that it's ready. One thing we did, though, that I wish we would have waited on was we bought a car seat right away. And since we've waited for quite a while, our car seat is no longer up to the newest safety standards. So I think we should have waited until we were matched. You can always run out and get a car seat when needed. That's true. Walmarts are usually open. Targets, you can get, in this day and age, you can get a car seat when you need one, not to mention Babies R Us, who usually will demonstrate for you more so using the product than a Target or a Walmart will. But another tip, I think, just if you don't have this already, and this may just be a teeny tiny little tip, is to set up a special email address just for your adoption. So that way, on days when you might not want to be bombarded with adoption out of the blue, you can just go to your regular email, and when you are sitting down researching adoption or planning or communicating regarding your adoption, you can visit your adoption email. And try not to put your last name in there. That might be an email address that you use with a potential birth mom. So it could be helpful. Plus, your regular email address might have been something you've had for 15, 20 years, maybe in some cases, and you might not want that. I mean, there's a whole footprint out there of your email address. If you've ever done reviews, if you've ever commented on anything, anyone who has your email address might be able to find that, and you might not want them to. So just create a special adoption email address, like, Jill and Tom become parents or something like that.
Right, and I would say if you have a special adoption email, don't put your last name in it, but also keep it really simple, because if this is something you decide to share with a woman who's considering you as adoptive parents for her child, it looks tacky to say something like, desperate for baby or waiting and ready.
Yeah.
Make it something that's clearly you, that says something like Jim and Joyce adopt, or just could it, just be smart about it. Don't stress over it too much, but at the same time, I've seen some emails that I thought, yeah, I really don't want to even spell that out to a birth mother. And then I've worked with other adoptive parents who thought, I have an email address, but my last name is in it, and I'm a little nervous before I get to know her better about sharing that information.
Or it's your work or college, your EDU or your company email address is your primary that you use for everything.
Right.
That's a good reason not to. You want to protect your own privacy.
Right. But at the same time, don't be surprised if once you get to know your child's birth mom that you exchange cell phone numbers or exchange emails or Facebook pages, because then she turns from a stranger into someone that you now trust, that you like, and you know a little better. So don't feel that you're always going to be on guard, but that is a good tip, especially when it comes to putting up a lot of people like to blog these days. Just know, I want to say on the blog note, if that's your style of journaling, I think that's an awesome format, but they are totally searchable, and even if you have your privacy settings really tight, anything on the internet's fair game. So just, be a little smart about what you're posting there, because again, if your child's birth mom finds you through, say, a Lifetime profile and then does a bunch of poking around online and finds your personal blog, and then she's reading all these, posts from you complaining about the weight and where is she all right, and just looking kind of unstable to her, because she's thinking,
Right.
I thought you were ready for a child, and this blog sounds angry and emotionally upset. You wanna be aware that just like employers can find your Facebook, prospective birth moms can find your blog. So just, be prepared to put things up there that are honest and they're you, but that at the same time you realize this is the internet and anybody can take this out of context or use this against us. So just be smart. And these are probably tips for a completely different webinar, but I'm glad to have all of you here tonight, and I just want to again remind you, if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to contact us. I want to thank all of you for hanging in there till the bitter end. We had kind of a thorough webinar tonight. We covered a lot of ground. Maybe we should have just done 5 tips, but we really wanted to load you up. And also I want to invite all of you to continue to look for invitations to our upcoming webinars. We're going to have a question and answer session next week. And we continue to have plans in the future for more adoption stories and tips and resources and just times to get those, just any questions answered in the upcoming months. So, and November is National Adoption Month too, and I'm trying to plan some special guests and topics for us then, so please stay tuned. And if you have any questions, contact us at 1-800-923-6784 or visit lifetimeadoption.com. And as always, Kim, I know that if they emailed you that you could get them to the person that could get their answer if you didn't have it. So
yes,
you can always write.
absolutely.
You can always write to Kim. Her email is kim@lifetimeadoption.com. So thank you all, and I look forward to meeting with you again very soon. And we look forward to hearing from you about your questions and how we can help with the process. So have a great night, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good night. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.